Counselor, thank you very much for being with us here this afternoon. We appreciate you taking the time and effort to do this with us remotely.
Well, thank you very much for setting this up, Chris. As you know, I'll be attending a council meeting at the day of your event, and I appreciate you accommodating and letting us tape this ahead of time.
Absolutely. So let's get right into the questions. We are sitting here with a business audience today. Executive counselors have a range of different activities and duties, but not all of them really directly pertain to the business community per se. But there is one, obviously, that has really dominated the newspaper stories over the last 9 months or so. Certainly, it's an issue that you're no stranger to, and that is the issue of the passenger rail.
Sure.
Roughly 8 months ago now, the Executive Council voted to deny the federal funding that would have allowed for the Capital Corridor study to move forward. There were many proponents of that, obviously, and with full disclosure, the Chamber was a very big proponent of that. So certainly I asked the question with a bias in that. That being said,
Sure.
I'd love to give you an opportunity to respond to the audience here today on why you cast that decisive vote against the federal study.
Well, Chris, as you know, there was about a $3.7 million study to study extending the rail corridor basically from Lowell, because it's already there, but maybe formally from Boston to Concord, and which would include, stops at Manchester and stops at Concord. And I think the biggest hindrance to going forward with the study is the price tag that comes with it. Should we spend $3.7 million on building a train that we know is going to cost about $500 million with interest? Also, bearing in mind that this isn't the first study to study the train, this is the fourth study to study whether we should have passenger rail. So I think the council's approach was to take baby steps. The council has, since that vote, included in the Exit 36 South study, studying perhaps a location for a train station and working it with the design of that exit, that if we go ahead and build that exit, which I think we will, where would we put a train station that would have quick access to the highway from that exit? And when we're building I-93 expansions, there's a corridor left to build a train. So it's coming on the day when we have enough population to support it. And one of the difficulties about expanding rail is it doesn't have a dedicated revenue stream like highways do. The cars pay the gas tax, build the roads. And we have in Nashua a bus service that goes to Boston, the Boston Express, as you know. And the Boston Express is now running in the black, getting commuters to Boston and back in the black without any taxpayer subsidies.
Now, the bus service itself runs out of Nashua roughly 72,000 passengers per year. That's a pretty healthy number. Compare that, though, to the Downeaster, which runs 528,000 passengers a year. And both the bus service here in Nashua and the Downeaster rail line over in Maine serve roughly the same amount of population, about 500,000 in each metro area. Someone would look at that, I would think, logically and say, wow, there's a tremendous amount of potential ridership here in southern New Hampshire if they brought the rail line in. The buses are transporting 72,000. The Downeaster is transferring 528,000 people. So doesn't there seem to be a pretty good need right there logically?
The problem is that the Downeaster, as well as it runs, still requires an $8 to $10 million subsidy every year. We got to find that money. Now, in New Hampshire, the courts have said that the Constitution says we can't use highway funds to fund a train. So the money that you would need to subsidize this train would have to compete with the developmentally disabled services, would have to compete with education, would have to,
now, a
compete with all
critic, though,
health
would
and human
say
services.
that the state budget runs in the billions of dollars, and we're talking $8 to $10 million. It's almost comparing, a few pennies to a $1,000 budget. So the fact is, yes, you do need to find the money. However, when you do look at the big picture and the state budget being in the billions of dollars and an operational cost of $8 to $10 million, it does seem that dedicated, committed officials probably could find that funding.
But the point is that we're running a commuter service in the black now that doesn't compete with any other funding. it doesn't make sense to put it on a train that would, A, devastate the bus service if we split the ridership.
Now, the Downeaster runs, and they also have a bus service out there. The bus service there has survived, so it necessarily wouldn't get devastated, correct?
Well, I think it would, because I think that the bus service is running in the black now. Any removal at this point in time of passengers will put the bus service black in the red. We'll put back into the red, losing money. We have something that's working right now, and as New Hampshire grows and has more population, then I believe that the train would make sense. And I think the train would probably make sense if we build it in stages, get it to the New Hampshire-Mass border first.
And we have business audience members here today, some of whom were approached by state officials roughly 3 years ago now, and asked to contribute money that allowed the state of New Hampshire to pursue the federal grant in the first place.
Right.
Some of them donated $1,000, some donated $10,000 to $15,000. They watched that money get flushed away by the Executive Council vote. Do you have anything that you want to say to them who were asked by the state to donate money to this cause that you cast a vote against?
Well, you know, we appreciate their enthusiasm for the project, but the bottom line is someone has to pay the $500 million that it would cost to build this rail line. It's got to come out of the taxpayers' pockets somewhere. And I think that the best thing for businesses is if we get our fiscal ship in order and do not put the burden of this train onto our grandchildren to pay back when we have something that works now. I think in the long run, today, it's not the best bang for the buck for businesses overall.
You know, you mentioned the last study that was done on this really didn't give you confidence that the state could afford to pay for the project. Yeah. That same study, though, was done close to a decade ago, back in 2003. A lot of circumstances have changed economically in terms of what businesses are looking for today and what they're feeling in their wallets. Would you agree that a lot of economic indicators have changed that might say to the state of New Hampshire, maybe we should take a look at this and update our study that was done 9 years ago?
You know, the bottom line is, can we afford it, and who's going to pay for it? You know, I think it hurts our business climate. If we were to add this to the business profits tax as $500 million, I'm not sure we'd have the same response. I think it has a more positive response when someone else is paying for it, whoever that is. Again, we have a service that works. It runs in the black. I don't think the government should come along and mess that up.
Switching from rail to just more issues in general here,
Sure.
You know, a lot of people don't really follow the Executive Council that closely. If you were to try and explain to them in a minute, what is the key difference between you as our counselor and your opponent, Ms. Pignatelli?
You know, I think that the biggest difference is that I want to have an economy that's live and vibrant. I want to choose department heads that are going to work with people, and in this case, you know, work with businesses who can cut through red tape, who can eliminate red tape, and who are working with us to make a good climate for businesses to thrive and survive here in New Hampshire.
Now, Ms. Pignatelli would probably say the same thing. You know, she also wants to create an economy where businesses can thrive. So, can you point to something specific that might differentiate you when it comes to representing business interests in this district?
I think if you were to look at the banking sector, for instance, we need a banking commissioner who will fight for us in Washington to loosen up the regulations that Washington has put on our local state chartered banks. I think if we are looking at the environmental services commissioner, we would look for someone who is an advocate for business and help people work through the regulations that we need to protect our environment and not put up roadblocks to progress, that type of thing.
Counselor, 10 minutes goes quickly.
Very fast.
It does. Thank you very much for taking some time with us here today to come in remotely and do this interview with us. And we certainly wish you best of luck in the weeks to come with your election.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for doing this with all the candidates. It's a great forum.
Thank you.